What's going on, YouTube? Let's move the chains back here again with Coach Phil Reacts. Excuse me. We've been getting positive comments about you, Coach Phil. I was just looking on YouTube Studio. People love the addition and getting your insight on the Canadian Football League. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How's it going for you?
It's going good, going good. Usually we do this on Wednesdays, so I know a lot of you are just now getting caught up to that, whether you're watching later, which is most people, or you're watching live. We'll go ahead and get right into it. First, I think the news of the week, other than what the thumbnail is, which we'll get to in a second, Bo Levi Mitchell, and I'll go ahead and remove that banner. But Dane Evans starting this week after a little bit of a scare in a little sloppy game for the BC Lions, but Evans came in and I thought that he played well, but he's going to be starting this week against Edmonton. What are your thoughts on this?
It isn't like they got anybody else. I mean, Dane Evans has proven that he can handle being a starter. Dane Evans has proven time and time again he is the best backup in a sense, but he's the safest bet to go with right now. So they're in good hands. I'm not worried at all. The offense might be a little slower. It might take a little bit time for him to get his bearings in order when it comes to working with that three-headed monster he has with his receivers. But he can rely on the run game. He has a good defense. It's not going to slow down. So I don't understand what the concern with everybody was.
Yeah, and also I think maybe the concern is more about Vernon Adams' health. But the good thing is that they've said that this is just precautionary, and they're also playing against the Elks. So I think people have to keep that in mind, and that if Vernon Adams isn't fully healthy, or he doesn't, even if he's got a bruise, you're playing the Elks. So while I don't love that I don't get to watch Vernon Adams play because he is exciting while dangerous at times, Dane Evans is a proven CFL quarterback, and I don't really think people should have to worry about anything here. And then we'll also go ahead and talk about, I don't really have a slide for it, but Bo Levi Mitchell. So he's been seen practicing in padded practices, and I'm leaning towards that. And just from what I've seen on Twitter lately is that he's probably not going to play this week. But, and I'll go ahead and pull up kind of the schedule here. But he's getting closer to finally being back this week, and this week they play Ottawa. So what are your thoughts on Bo Levi Mitchell coming in to help the Ticats?
I wouldn't try to rush Bo back so fast. I think right now they need to let him rest another week or two. Let him get fully healed from his injury, whether if it's fully healed, even if he's like 85, 90%, that's good to go. Fine. But you're going to want Bo in the middle stretch and then in the long stretch to be able to make it, because Ottawa's picking up pace right now, man. And if they want to secure a spot in the playoffs, man, they got to let Bo heal and let him get to a spot where he can still play an entire game.
Yeah, and it's also tough because this week for Hamilton is a short week that he's coming back because they do play on Friday. So that makes things a little harder. Like if the game were on Sunday or Saturday, then he could have a better chance at playing.
Right.
But I do hope that we get to see him play in the following week. So that's August 5th against Montreal. And that'll be a pretty big game because I'm going to go ahead and assume that Ottawa stays hot and wins and moves to 4-3. That'll put Hamilton at 2-5. So that'll be a really, really big game. And hopefully they can put a fight together. And I think that could maybe be a segue into some picks for this week. I know we're going a little bit out of order. We can go into the rankings after. But we'll go pick by pick. And I use this graphic because I've seen a lot of people, especially on the internet, talk about how the CFL is a little bit predictable at times. I think a lot of that is due to the injured quarterbacks around the league. That surely does not help. But I'm excited to see how it plays out. But I do think that this is just a good visual of, that's also very true. And it doesn't help when you have a team like Edmonton that is just so bad that they're going to basically lose every single game they play this season. Hamilton and Ottawa, who do you have in this one?
Which one?
Hamilton at Ottawa on Friday.
Hamilton at Ottawa. That's going to be a fun one to see. I'm loving what Hamilton's defense brings to the table against Ottawa. After what Dustin Crum has done the last 2 weeks, man, their momentum they're hot. They're white hot right now. So I got the edge to Ottawa, but I think it's going to be another close one.
Yeah, this Ottawa defense has a new face and style to it. This season, points for on the offense, I meant to say, 23 points per game, but that number's been rising, and it's mostly due to Dustin Crum's ability to run the football and what we saw last weekend in a huge game where they beat Calgary in overtime once again, another overtime thriller. This offense is legit with Dustin Crum. And to me, it's just another sign that I always thought that it was just more difficult for guys to come into the CFL and play right away without as much experience. But I think it could just be a case-to-case thing, and it may be a little bit overrated, just a tad bit, where you're having a guy like Crum just come in and, I mean, he hasn't dominated, but he's been really, really good, and he's becoming one of the favorite quarterbacks in the whole entire league right now. So I'm excited to see what they can do against Hamilton in this game. I'm also going to go Ottawa, though. I do think that they're the hotter team right now, and Hamilton's got a backup quarterback. I know they got Butler at running back, and we all love him. He's probably the best, or at least my favorite running back in the league. But I don't know. I don't see how Hamilton pulls this one, honestly.
Uh-oh.
Hey, 1 second.
No worries.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No
Okay,
worries.
next game, Saskatchewan and Toronto. So, okay, let's talk first. Let's talk about last weekend and Saskatchewan's shortcomings a little bit. I'll say this: that roughing the passer call should have been a safety. And I'm not saying that changed the game, but it definitely had an impact early in the game. Like if Saskatchewan gets that safety, they at least have a better opportunity to ride the momentum and win. Those of you who maybe didn't see the game or haven't watched highlights yet, to me it was it was roughing the passer call,
Right.
which was in the end zone, and it should have been a safety. And it was a huge play in the game.
I've heard people say that a lot about it. It shouldn't have been a roughing the passer, but if you really look at the play, it was ticky tack. I think where the mistake was that you can't really tackle a guy up near his neck, especially quarterbacks where you got to protect. They're trying to protect the quarterback now with all these injuries and quarterbacks getting hurt. Man, I kind of get the call, but you gotta let the boys play, man. You gotta let them do their thing, man. That was tough.
Yeah, and it also it's not like, because that happened early in the game.
Yeah.
It's not like Saskatchewan had other opportunities taken away. Like, you also gotta take the blame for the poor tackling defensively. I think, and we were talking about not wondering about Mason Fine. No pun intended. I think Mason Fine is perfectly fine at quarterback. There's not much you can do as a quarterback and as an offense when your defense cannot tackle.
I've been talking about it. The tackling, our tackling is atrocious. Our open field ability to tackle is just terrible. The last couple games, man, we've as speaking for Saskatchewan, like we've just had just no capability of tackling, especially in clutch moments. Against Calgary, that last drive, we talked about it. That was just some of the worst tackling I've seen from us in a while. But I feel like with Mason Fine, he's going to be okay. It's not a big deal. I'm not worried about it. I just think that the run game was stalled. Morrow had nothing. No lanes were made for him, and the line is making it tougher. They're just. I understand it's a makeshift line. They've been working on it since week 1, and it's been injuries and stuff like that. But you can't make up for the defense's inability to tackle and make plays, man. There was no consistency. They didn't come out the gate well. They didn't. It was a slow game, and I don't know. This game right here against Toronto, I'm nervous.
Yeah, and to me, just matchup wise, this is one that you should worry about if you're a
Mm-hmm.
Saskatchewan fan, because the matchup does not bode well. When you put Chad Kelly and that Argonauts offense on that field with a defense that can't really tackle right now consistently, that's where I say I couldn't pit Saskatchewan in this one.
Here's the thing, with Toronto, is it's funny that they're undefeated. You know, they're making a good run right now. They're playing good. I still my heart says yes, go with Saskatchewan, but reality is this is not a matchup that I really like for Saskatchewan against Toronto. Anything can go, anything can happen. We might come out, we might be on fire most of the game. But the way Chad Kelly's playing right now, he looks comfortable in the offense. The run game is there, the passing game is there. Chad makes things happen. Their defense, their ball hawks all over the place, man. It's tough. It's gonna be a tough one right here.
Yeah. I think definitely I'd go with Toronto. Also, Toronto, quick, really good stat in a league where we've seen a lot of offensive lines struggle, especially as of late. We see that with quarterback injuries, quarterbacks getting sacked a lot. Toronto has 6 sacks allowed. Calgary is the next best team with 11. So they've been protecting Kelly, and he's also got to give credit to him getting the ball out and avoiding the rush. But I think Toronto's offense is just the one to beat right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
they're the class of the league. BC and Edmonton, we kind of touched up on this one. BC, I know that's really gutsy of me, and I went out on a limb saying that BC would beat Edmonton, but another home game too for Edmonton.
Yeah. I Edmonton, you know, what they got going on right now at the quarterback position, no matter what they do, until they solidify that quarterback spot, man, they're going to struggle. Um, yeah, BC's going to get this one, man. They're going to overwhelm Taylor Cornelius. That defense is going to overwhelm, especially that front line, man. Betts is going to get a couple more sacks. I expect at least 2 sacks out of him.
Yeah, 21 sacks allowed on the season. Also, we already know Edmonton's going to have some types, probably multiple turnovers in this game. 20 total turnovers already on the season.
Yeah.
It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think that's the case for Edmonton right now. Also, Edmonton, I think they might be the most penalized team in the league. I have to look that up in terms of total yardage. Um, it's just everything about Edmonton is so bad right now. So
Everything is so bad. And I know you got to hold players accountable. Yes, they haven't played their best, but you have to put a lot of the blame on Chris Jones for not. I can't really sit there and say he hasn't prepared them, because we don't know what happens during the week. They do have a game plan, obviously, but they're not executing well. And again, you can't make up for it in that quarterback play at all. It's tough.
Yeah, and so the statistic for penalties, they're not the worst team. They're second worst behind Hamilton. So they have 65 penalties. Hamilton has 66, and
Mhm.
Edmonton has 591 total yards. Hamilton has 624. But also, to me, you can see how disciplined a football team is, or just any team in any sport, really, by the number of penalties they're taking in per game. I think that's a huge problem for Edmonton right now. Like, it's already hard enough to win with everything else that's going on, but when you shoot yourself in the foot, it's just going to make things so much worse.
It's more like, and you took words right out of my mouth. It's not that they're undisciplined; they're just playing sloppy, and there's
Yeah.
no rhyme or reason for it. I mean, you can't. Edmonton just has so many problems, and they're playing at home. The streak's going to continue, man. It's a sad thing to see that this team is struggling the way they are, man. And you got to hold everybody accountable in this situation with this team, man.
Yeah. So moving on to the next game, Calgary at Montreal. Moving on also to maybe a brighter picture, Montreal bringing in Sean Lemon, veteran defensive lineman who's going to help them get more pass rush, hopefully, and just get more action on defense. Going up against a Calgary team who has an explosive offense that
Mm-hmm.
was shown in the loss to Ottawa. And watching Jake Mayer, it was for every spectacular bomb he made, he also had a turnover or two. Not all of them were his fault, but I think this game is another very important game because Calgary is a team that really needs wins. Montreal's a team that really needs wins. And let me look at their overall records. I mean, these are teams middling with 500 right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just not a place you want to be when you're trying to make the playoffs. So Calgary 2-4, Montreal 2-3. So they're both sub 500 currently, and I think that this is huge game. Like last week was a huge game for Calgary. This week makes it even bigger.
It's kind of hard for Calgary right now because they don't have Kadeem Carey in the backfield, so they've had to make up for what their strength is the run game. Now they've discovered they can throw the ball, so when Kadeem does come back, yes, that offense is going to be it's going to be scary. But what they're working with right now, Mayer has stepped up. I'm very impressed with how he's played. But Calgary's offense, they have to score every time they have the ball. They can't. If they don't score, they're going to fall behind. And they haven't really had to play catch up too much this season. They had to play catch up with Winnipeg. They were in it a little bit to the second half, but going up against Montreal with Sean Lemon, I did speak with him. I thought he was going to sign with Winnipeg. I thought that was going to tear up the entire league and just wreck everything for everyone with him. Going to Winnipeg, possibly with Jackson Jeffcoat, Willie Jefferson, and that defense. But for him to go to Montreal, that's going to be a presence that they've lacked on the defensive line, and it'll wake up their defense a little bit more. I haven't really seen much of their defense like where they were like they had their moments, but they haven't been like, oh my goodness, they're amazing defense. So this will be a tough one to see who's going to do it. I'm kind of up in the air about this one.
Yeah, and then also talk about like another guy who returned was Markin Michelle, just back to like what we knew he could be. And I've actually had the opportunity in the past to talk to Markin a couple of years ago. Awesome guy, but just an awesome stat line, 134 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. He played a massive role in that offensive game plan, I think. And he's a nice Tommy Lee Lewis was also really I'm sorry, I'm mixing up some people. Clark Barnes was another guy who I thought played a fantastic game, and then of course Reggie Bagleton. But the wide receiving core is really good for Calgary, so hopefully they can pick up some of that slack that they just don't have in the run game right now.
And even speaking on Montreal, also they've played really well offensively so far this season. They had their moments where Cody did turn over the ball, but we did see the best so far of them when they played Toronto. So if they could pull some strings together and make something happen and attack Calgary's deep, which is hard to attack that defense because they are they're pretty good defense. They're not world beaters, but they get the job done. But you got to catch them in places where when you have the ball, you got to attack them in that red zone. You can't allow yourself to be stagnant as an offense against that defense. So it should be a good game.
Yeah, and they do have a good defensive line. We can go up and pull up the PFF grades. Mike Rhodes. Rose is a guy who always appears on this honor roll of the week every single week. But that'll be a really fun game. I think Calgary finds itself probably in the game of the week once again. So being a fan of Calgary, that's hard to see because we're living life on the line right now. And I do think you made a good point. So like what do you think could be the ceiling for the Montreal offense.
The ceiling. If
Like,
I'm
do you think they could be a top 3 or top 4 maybe offense in the entire league by the end of the season? Maybe that's a better way to ask it, more specific.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is Jason Moss has to let Anthony Calvillo call more of the plays. You
Okay.
can tell when Jason Moss is calling the plays because they're the same plays that he called with Cody in Saskatchewan. I think when we saw them play Toronto, there was a lot more creativity, and I think Anthony Calvillo has some input on it because he knows how to dial up some stuff. They were getting creative. They just can't become rudimentary and be predictable. That's all. If they don't become predictable, they'll be a top 3, top 4 offense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And Cody Fajardo has a top 3 QBR. You
Mm-hmm.
have Austin Mack,
Mm-hmm.
who's one of the best pass catchers in the league right now. So I do think that like maybe this could be a sneaky team if they can keep developing, of course, and maybe if that defense takes a step up, like if Sean Lemon comes in and is really, really good, could be a really sneaky team that makes it into the playoffs. Of course, they got to start winning games. They're 2-4 right now, so
One more
they
thing
got
I'll
to
say
focus
this.
on that.
One more thing I want to add about Montreal is we forget that Montreal, people haven't brought it up, but they made the East Final last year. This is a team that has like the juice. They have something to go get. Nobody thought that Montreal would get as far as they did last year. So I think that now that they have a more veteran quarterback with Cody rather than they had Trevor Harris last year,
Mm.
that makes a huge difference. So down the stretch, we could see Montreal do some things.
Yeah, I think that's a little good little take at season or at week 8 that Montreal could be a sneaky team. With that being said, we can go really quickly to the power rankings. Of course, we've had some shakeups. The Ottawa Red Blacks have moved up. Rough Riders moved down. Of course, Edmonton is at the bottom. Some people on Twitter making jokes that Edmonton is too high at number 9 and that maybe a potential expansion team should be above them in
Yeah.
terms of potential in the power rankings. What are your thoughts on these?
Mm, perfect.
Perfect.
Nothing. I can't. You can't. I like seeing Ottawa at 4 though. I like seeing that. We're gonna see what happens uh this week. Could they jump Winnipeg? That's a huge if. But this game could be a difference maker for them. So I like the rankings right now.
Yeah, and Montreal again. We're talk about them real quick. Sitting at number 5, I think that's a nice spot. You get a win over Calgary. I know, trying to be unbiased here, even though I'm a Calgary fan, but that the competition in the middle is really where it's at. I feel like, other than the top 3, Toronto, BC, you could put Winnipeg in there. Maybe you want to put Winnipeg kind of in their own tier if you were to tear it out. I mean, if you were to tear it out, probably you put Toronto in their own tier
Mm-hmm.
above everybody else, and then have BC in 2. Maybe you could group Winnipeg, and then Ottawa, Montreal, Calgary. I guess Ottawa is kind of separating themselves out, which is good to see because they've taken their level of play to a different height and a different level right
This
now.
this might be a crazy, crazy, crazy take, but I don't really care. I'm gonna say it. Um, in in the East, we already know the top dog is Toronto. The way they're playing right now is phenomenal. But it's gonna come down to Ottawa or Montreal. Who's gonna knock off Toronto at some point?
Hmm. I'll
I was I would say at some point they're gonna meet. Those two teams are gonna meet Toronto down the stretch, and even in the playoffs, it's obvious. But I have a lot of faith in Ottawa if they can knock off Toronto. Just
so I've
surprise,
got the
just surprise them.
standings pulled up so viewers can see what you're referring to. But yeah, Ottawa sitting right here at 3-3. Toronto obviously 5-0, but Ottawa's getting hot. And I think what you're referring to is that a possible upset in the future. When does let's look at the schedule real quick.
Yeah.
This Ottawa schedule. Looking that up. What else do you like from Ottawa that you've seen in particular?
What I see is the defense. Dandridge is playing well. Malden's playing well. But the fact that just as a collective, they find ways to win and test teams that I don't think Toronto has had to face that type of matchup. A team that just won't die, a team that just won't lay down. They've got something. They've awoken. The chemistry that they have with each other it shows. There's little things that I noticed that maybe not a lot of people notice. It's the fact that they don't argue, they don't really fight with each other. They might have a little, back and forth, but they are working together and saying, hey, nobody wants to see. People might say, oh yeah, we were happy for Ottawa. No, they're not. They're not really happy to see Ottawa win right now. Ottawa's not the fate. Ottawa's the little brother. You're supposed to be at the bottom of the cellar. They are showing that give us our damn respect. And I mentioned it before this season. Like, it all started last year when they got rid of their head coach and Bob Dice. Bob Dice is leading this team. He knows how to lead these men, and it's little things. Not saying Toronto could come through and slaughter everybody. That's fine. But you can't sleep on Ottawa right now. There's something that Ottawa has that I don't think Montreal has that could knock off, to say Montreal can knock off Toronto. That's what I think.
Yeah, and to your point, looking at the schedule, this Toronto-Ottawa game, it will be Ottawa at Toronto the next time they meet. That's in week 10.
Mm-hmm.
So Ottawa host Hamilton week 8, which I think it's fair to say that's most likely a win. Week 9, Ottawa travels to Saskatchewan. So, and that's not a given, like playing at Saskatchewan. Never a given, but assuming that they get 2 wins, they'll be positive over 500, and that'll just be a huge game in the East, week 10, Ottawa at Toronto. And then after that game, Ottawa turns around and hosts Montreal in week 11. So week 10 and 11 are season-defining games.
Yeah,
for Ottawa.
And if they pull that off, man, can't nobody tell them nothing. Can't nobody tell them a damn thing. They've shown that even just beating, people say, oh, they beat Winnipeg, it was a fluke. Well, they look what they did the next week. They've beaten two quality teams out of the West. So I ain't mad at it. Well, I'm excited to see those games.
Yeah, they're a team that knows how to win, and sometimes in sports, it's hard to describe that because there's no statistic for it, but it's there. Like I coach a team, local team, youth team.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at our talent, we did not have the talent that other teams in our league had.
Right.
Our program traditionally just a bad program in general.
Right.
But we went 10-3, and we only lost to the 2 best teams in the league. Twice to one, and then in overtime to the other. Sometimes that just happens, like you just have a team that is rallied around and has what it takes to win, and it's hard to define how to get there and what it means. But people who are around sports, just they can understand what that is.
It's the synergy. It's the synergy that you have with each other as a team. It's the little things that you do as a team, whether it's bonding, whether it's, hey, we're going to stay another hour or so and work together. It's the extra work that you put in together that prepares you for those type of games. And a lot. It's the things that people don't pay attention to. They just focus on when the lights is on and you go out there and play, and even they focus on like, oh, well, this happened in practice. No, it's the things outside of practice and the game that makes you be able to step up as a team. So it's synergy, it's culture, and it's just we step up. It's unspoken. It's just we do it. And you're like, well, damn, how do we do that? Well, it's all the work you put in. So, and they've had to face some stuff, losing Jeremiah and the quarterbacks, losing both quarterbacks, Terry Adams and Jeremiah Masoli, and then the struggling play of Arbuckle. Man, it's a storybook. It's a story right now, and their story is still unwritten, but it'll be a hell of a story if they pull it off.
It will be. All right, we're coming up on about 30 minutes. Anything else, Coach Phil, that you want to cover real quick before we leave off?
I'd say I think right now we've kind of talked about it with Ottawa. Man, Ottawa is the feel-good story right now. But I think the other team that we need to really like keep an eye out for is Winnipeg. I'm not Winnipeg. I'm sorry. I don't think Edmonton will go this season without a win. At some point, they're going to get one. It may not be this week. It may be we talk about it in a few weeks, but I'm going to give Edmonton some kind of love. Everything can't just be all bad with them. I think with Edmonton, they'll put something together.
I'd hope so.
That fan base is dying for a win. If they get a win at home and they break the streak and just end it, that might be something that will help them, not in the moment per se, but down the line next season and the season after that, where like, okay, we got out the doldrum, we got out the den of lions, and we're gonna move forward. So that's what I think Edmonton they'll get it together at some point.
Maybe it'll happen when Trey Ford plays.
We'll see. We'll see when that happens.
All right. I hope everybody enjoyed. Y'all go follow Coach Phil Reacts on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media. Thanks for joining us for CFL Talk. Again, we'll be back next week at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays, the normal time. This week, we just had to do a little bit of a schedule change. Thanks for stopping by, and make sure to move the chains. Let's go.
All right. Take it easy, everybody.